We certainly can say that a lot has happened in the last week, and information has been dripping in slowly, sometimes denied the next day. But since radio silence has been installed again, the conversations pretty much died out in the rest of the week. Now we are all waiting for the informateur Ronald Plaster to send his report to the Parliament on Monday. And in the debate that will take place on Wednesday, we even might hear what the heck happened. And did Omtzigt quit? Or what, actually? So, what am I talking about? Well, first things first. Hi, my name is Phil, and since the elections in November, I've looked to try to keep you informed as well as myself about all the developments. Biggest questions of today? Will the party of the PVV succeed in creating a majority coalition? When that isn't possible, will he be able to form a minority coalition supported by another party? Or are we going to have an extra parliamentary cabinet where the voice of the largest party will be reduced but opens up new possibilities to come to maybe even creative solutions? Sadly, I need to give some information first before we get to the juicy stuff. But to understand it well, we need to bite the bullet, especially when you are new here. The coalition I mentioned needs to be formed because of the great amount of parties we have in the parliament. The largest party needs to form a coalition with other parties to create a majority in that parliament. The process is in place to come to this coalition. It's a bit of a loose process, but it does have certain elements that come back every time. There is a second phase, a first phase, scout phase, a second phase, information phase, and a third phase, formateur phase. I'll get back to that, don't worry. The Parliament is officially responsible for this whole process. But let me explain a bit of this process, since it is important to understand where we are and to understand what actually happened last week and what it means for the future. The process this year has been extended by a new phase, which isn't the second phase, but it does come second. Yeah, don't ask me. But first we have the scout phase, where a scout is going to talk to all parties to see which coalition or coalitions, possible coalitions, might be possible. The next phase I have called myself the investigative talks, since this phase is brand new. I already said so. It's not the second phase, it's the AB phase. This phase has 3 subjects, reduced to 2, where the 4 parties need to agree upon before going to the next phase, which is the second phase. The next phase is the phase of information. Yeah, sounds a bit weird. There's no good translation for it. And we use the same word in Dutch. Central in this word is the word form, and information is the informal phase of the formation of the coalition. I hope that makes sense. And to be honest, it sounds weird in Dutch as well. It is the phase where an informateur, I can't translate that either, maybe like informal formateur, leads the negotiations between the different parties to a possible coalition. This can take up to several months, and it doesn't guarantee that the coalition will be actually formed. The last phase will be led by the formateur. We are now in the formal part of the formation. This formateur is normally the Prime Minister-to-be, and he or she is finally producing an agreement. This agreement is a result of the negotiations where parties will need to give and take. Between all those phases, a report is made by the scout and the informateur. This report is the basis for a debate in the parliament and a new assignment from that parliament. At the moment, we are now at the end of the second phase, the phase of the investigative talks, or talks for short. And that is actually interesting because we will finally find out whether there is even a possibility for the PVV, the largest party, to form a coalition. And I will come back to that. The largest party has the initiative in this process, and in this case it is the PVV. However, it will be hard for the PVV to form a coalition, even though in the polls the PVV is still rising, now up to 52 seats, coming from 37 seats during the elections, and before that they had 17 seats. So actually they would elections be held now, then they would have gone from 17 to 52. The parties he is trying to form a coalition with, that is the VVD, NSA and the BBB, have quite different opinions on a whole lot of issues, except maybe for the PVV and the BBB, but the BBB doesn't have that many members, in the parliament that is. The VVD and the NSA, though, are, you could say, still part of the old way of doing politics, especially the VVD. Actually, I need to say that the NSA is a bit of a loner party, founded by a loner. However, they do have an interesting take on things, and this brand new party, except for the leader Peter Omtzigt, who has been a member of the parliament, I believe for 17 years or so, seems to have taken seat in the parliament out of idealism. But this party also needs to prove itself. I already said that it is not going to be easy for the PVV to form a coalition. A lot of parties feel that their opinions and proposals are extreme and are factually unconstitutional. The PVV is against Islam, would like to break down their mosques and forbid people to have even a Quran in the house. It would also like to close the borders for all Muslims. And all this is simply against the Constitution. It is against religious freedom. It's not my first language, you already heard that. Besides that, Geert Wilders, and he not alone in his party, is often in attack mode when he debates in the second chamber, the parliament. And he also can be really rude. All this made commentators say that Geert Wilders can only become prime minister if he is willing to give up about everything he stands for. He promised already that he will park the issues related to the Islam. But another big problem occurred for them this week, which was also the centerpiece of the conflicts. It is not the PVV that is in the center of the news this week. It is the NSA. What happened? Monday came, and Tuesday is what happened. The NSA, per person of Peter Omtzigt, the party leader, informed everyone in different forms that they will no longer be part of these investigative talks, that they are waiting for the report of the informateur, which will be debated on Wednesday in the Parliament. Peter Omtzigt not only wants to end these talks for now, he also announced that he is not going to be part of a coalition. He feels that he can't be responsible for promises the coalition wants to make, he already knows will not come to fruition. And that all has to do with money. I'll get back to that later. Let's first look at the coalition, because for the coalition this means that a majority coalition is no longer a possibility. However, as I mentioned, there are other possibilities. One of the possibilities is to form a minority coalition, so the parties will have less than half of the seats, with another party supporting the most important topics. And the NSA already said, because they want this country to be governed, has already said that they are willing to be the supporting party. Of course, that party gets something in return, and that will be some support for some of their themes. However, a support party will not provide members for the cabinet. So that is a big difference. When you want to do it officially, it means that there is a negotiation between coalition parties themselves, forming a coalition, and a negotiation between that coalition and the supportive party. That is a formal way of doing it, but what is meant with support is anyone's guess, because it can also be done without an agreement. The Netherlands tried to operate like that once with an official agreement between coalition and the supportive party, and the supportive party or the supporting party was the PVV, and that wasn't a success. Since the elections, this construct has been spoken of many times. Within 48 hours after the elections, the VVD already claimed this spot of supporter, fearing that if they wouldn't do it quickly, the NSA would claim this spot. The decision of the VVD, however, was not well received by its voters, and whether the VVD is still claiming this position, I have no clue. And since they have radio silence, not telling us anything, except for the last few weeks, we don't hear it anymore, but it might still be there. However, now the NSA has also claimed to become a supportive party. And to have a minority coalition of two parties, of which one party is really small, with two supportive parties, that is not what you want. That sounds really weak, and that sounds like it can fall really quickly. And with falling, I mean that they don't use their 4 years mandate. However, we already knew that the NSA didn't favor a minority coalition of PVV, BBB and the NSA itself with support of the VVD. They have made that clear to the scout. So what we have now at the end of phase or round 1B is two parties who want to support, two parties who want to form a coalition, but only have together 43 of the seats out of 150. So it wouldn't even be a third. 44 seats. Still, it wouldn't be a third. Most people will say that's not enough. Besides that, having said that, the NSA is also stepping out of this phase, the phase of the investigative talks. That is not the negotiation phase, although some negotiations already took place. That he stepped out of this process for now is not a big surprise, because a lot of people already anticipated it. However, they anticipated that he would fall out of the process altogether, but that doesn't seem to be the case. He is just waiting for the informateur to come with his report and willing to get into the second round, or the information phase. Because Peter Omtzigt stepped out of the talks and nobody actually knowing what is going on, the other three parties felt push to have some more talks. So they have been talking up to this weekend and will continue on Monday. And on all of those occasions, all those meetings, they have been inviting the NSA, but he declined over and over again. Some speculate that it might have to do with his current relationship with the informateur, Ronald Plasterk, where Omtzigt sees big concerns and problems and has made even an accusation against Plasterk. The informateur is just waving this away.
Ja, dat is eerlijk gezegd een beetje onzin, maar daar ga ik nu niet nader op in.
A bit of nonsense, according to him. I think Omtzigt feels quite different about it. Also, Omtzigt doesn't see a way to turn the talks over this issue, and that's another reason why he didn't return to the table. He feels that it needs more space and that it can't be discussed in those talks, and that it needs to be discussed in the next phase. Or at some other time, but when there is enough time to talk about it. It all started with finances. This was the topic in the last few weeks of the talks, and apparently problems started to occur. Radio silence started slowly to die. Tweets started to appear, sometimes even nasty ones. And Geert Wilders was open about the fact that they were in a difficult stage of the talks. These tweets gave the impression that the atmosphere between the parties was not very good, to say the least. And I think you need some trust, some bottom line, some way of communicating with each other and respecting each other to come to a coalition. That's my idea. According to Omtzigt, he already has been asking about the financial situation of the Netherlands since the beginning of the talks. But he didn't get the right answers, possibly because the request was not that clear. That's what he thought. A few weeks ago, a new request was made to the departments with a question to assess their own financial situation and mostly to see whether there were possible financial setbacks foreseeable in the future. On Tuesday, Omtzigt asked the informateur Plasterk whether he knew something more about this question. In the afternoon, Plasterk showed Omtzigt 21 letters from the departments who has been coming in between the 23rd and the 31st of January. Plasterk hadn't been telling him or the others that those letters were coming in response to their request, or that there were even letters. After reading these letters, Omtzigt concluded that the financial situation of the Netherlands is far more worse than was anticipated. And by then they were already informed with the advice cut costs by 17 billion, which is quite a bit for a small country as the Netherlands. But if I get Omtzigt right, then he actually says that the situation is worse than that. Then that might be a good reason to say that you don't want to enter the coalition and want to become a supportive partner. The accusation he made towards Plasterk had to do with the fact that Omtzigt and the other parties didn't know about those letters, and he also concluded that the informateur knew that all the financial stuff they were talking about, their plans, etc., wouldn't be able to come to fruition, and he has withheld that information. Since it was the last day of talks officially, and even when it wasn't, being Omtzigt, didn't see a possibility to turn the talks around. He felt that should be done at another time. And that is why he decided to get out of the talks. And it is obvious that some trust has broken between Omtzigt and Plasterk. How bad that is, yeah, that's anyone's guess. Caroline van der Plas of the BBB said later they did make a suggestion to him.
Dus dat hij wilde wij hebben zelfs ook nog gezegd tegen Pieter van joh, als je daar nog over wil nadenken, over die financiën, noem maar op. Misschien dat we dan morgen nog verder kunnen of misschien wel vrijdag, weet je, laat het even bezinken.
But I think that Omtzigt is right that this is not something you can talk over on a Friday afternoon or something like that. It needs more time. The other parties didn't see any problem with the finances because it has happened to more coalitions and it should be part of the next phase, the information phase. But according to Omtzigt, they already talked weeks about it and several financial advisors have been seen going in and coming out of the talks.
U van het argument dat hij zegt van ja, wij kregen die formulieren, die financiële paragraaf pas heel laat en daarom wil ik nu deze gesprekken staken?
Ik kan het echt niet plaatsen.
Kijk, we hebben met elkaar afgesproken om uiteindelijk deze week te beslissen of we genoeg vertrouwen hebben om met z'n vieren de dingen die we moeten doen voor Nederland en in de verdere formatie, voor een kabinetsformatie, om met z'n vieren daarin verder gaan in een tweede ronde. En die financiën horen ook thuis in een tweede ronde.
Ja, de financiën kan het toch eigenlijk niet zijn, want ja, daar kan je vragen over stellen. Ook zeer terecht dat hij die vragen heeft gesteld. Maar daar kan je op doorgaan, met elkaar over praten, ook in deze of in een volgende ronde besluiten over nemen, zoals dat hoort. Maar om dan het hazenpad te kiezen.
Wait. Vanish. According to Omtzigt, he had told the informateur Plasterk how he felt about the whole situation. But he sent him only an app or an SMS to tell him that as far as he is concerned, the investigative talks are done. Later on, he went to a hotel to meet a few journalists he invited to talk about what happened. The result of this was that Wilders of the PVV, the Silges of the VVD and Caroline van der Plas of the BBB heard about this news through the media. And only later on, while waiting for him that night, they got an app or an SMS from Omtzigt. In the meantime, though, Omtzigt was in a talk show to tell the citizens of the Netherlands what happened according to his version. Omtzigt is a man of transparency. but whether you can say that this is transparency.
Ja, ik ben echt oprecht verbaasd en ook wel geschokt eerlijkzijns, want ja, we waren toch bezig met goede en constructieve gesprekken. Ook stukken van de heer Omtzigt zelf die op tafel lagen. Ja, dus ik begrijp er helemaal niets van. Ik hoop ook dat we vanavond, we zijn uitgenodigd door de informateur, dat we daar toch alle vier komen. En dat hij ons, dat is hij toch denk ik wel verschuldigd, een beetje een uitleg geeft en ook in Nederland waarom dat is gebeurd.
We zaten midden in constructieve gesprekken en dan begrijp ik niet zo goed waarom je daarvan weg zou lopen.
Hij heeft het uitgelegd, het ging om de financiën.
Ja, ik kon die uitleg ook niet echt plaatsen eerlijk gezegd. We hadden gesprekken juist erover, we hebben vragen uitgezet en dan kom je met aanvullende vragen en dan ga je die puzzel leggen. Met name ook in de volgende ronde, dat je echt gaat onderhandelen. Dus ik begrijp er nog steeds niet zoveel van.
Ik hoorde het via de media en Plasterk hoorde het via een appje.
Ja. Ja.
Wat zegt dat?
Ja, ik zou dat nooit doen, maar iemand anders misschien wel. Ja, dat is niet mijn stijl.
I think that good communication is part of transparency. Omtzigt is also the man of institutions, or bringing back the trust between citizens and governments and their constitutions. Wilders had this to say about it.
Voor iemand die zo belangrijk vindt dat wij in de nieuwe bestuurscultuur de instituties van Nederland hoog in het vaandel hebben, vind ik het wel op zijn minst merkwaardig, laat ik me voorzichtig uitdrukken, dat hij de informateur, toch een vertegenwoordiger van een hoog college van staat, namelijk het Nederlands parlement, een appje stuurt en met journalisten gaat praten.
The informateur agrees that Omtzigt hasn't shown respect for the institution of informateur. He personally didn't have any problems with it. It might be though that Omtzigt felt it the other way around, and that is that he felt let down by this representative of the parliament, by this institution. He mentioned in the talk show, where he showed up during the evening, that this was a big drop, referring to the drops who fall in a bucket. Until. Next you're going to see the explanation of Plasterk, the informateur, about what he perceived has happened.
Pieter Omtzigt zegt, u heeft de afgelopen weken informatie achtergehouden. Hij heeft heel erg zijn best moeten doen om dat boven tafel te krijgen. Dan gaat het over die financiële informatie vanuit ministeries. Klopt dat?
Nee, dat klopt echt niet.
Dus... U wilde dat ook in het verslag meegeven, die cijfers?
Tuurlijk.
U zegt net zelf, vorige week hebben wij die brieven ontvangen. Klopt het dan dat u die pas vandaag hebt gedeeld met het nieuw sociaal contract?
Ik heb die brieven vorige week ontvangen. Omdat er vertrouwelijke informatie in stond, heb ik eerst contact moeten hebben met de griffier van de Tweede Kamer over hoe wordt met die informatie omgegaan. Dat is over het weekend gebeurd. En vandaag is die informatie gedeeld.
Maar in tussentijd wordt door Pieter Omtzigt gesuggereerd dat in de tussentijd er over financiën is gesproken en u dus over informatie beschikte dat dat gesprek wellicht een andere kant op moest gaan, maar dat u die niet gedeeld had.
Nee, dat is niet zo.
Dus Omtzigt liegt daar.
Ik weet alleen maar wat ik u net zei. Er is gevraagd om die informatie. Die informatie is vorige week op mijn bureau beland. Ik heb over het weekend contact gezocht met de griffier Tweede Kamer, omdat daar, kijk, als er gevraagd wordt aan een departement, verwacht u ergens een financiële tegenvaller, dan zou het landsbelang geschaad kunnen worden als dat openbaar wordt. Dus ik moest eerst even overleggen met de griffier Tweede Kamer, hoe gaan we met die informatie om. En nou goed, dat overleg dat leidde ertoe dat ik dat vanochtend...
Maar eigenlijk zegt hij vertrouwen in u op als ik die brief goed lees.
Nou weet u, dit gesprek moeten we nu niet hebben, want dat moet ik met hem onder 4 ogen hebben.
Meneer Plasterk, wat zegt het over het proces dat Omtzigt net al een hele brief aan zijn leden heeft gestuurd en u van niks weet?
Ik ben daar verbaasd over en de andere partijleiders die heb ik kort gesproken zijn er ook verbaasd over.
Daar bent u toch niet alleen verbaasd over? Ik zou wel gepikeerd zijn als ik informateur was.
Ja, goed, daarom ben ik ook informateur.
Well, you can't deny him some humor. In the meantime, on Thursday, Plasterk and Omtzigt have spoken on the phone. The only thing Plasterk wanted to say about it is that he was glad they had spoken with each other. A few days later I have been looking at the talk show, and there was something that Omtzigt said what made me think that the biggest difference between the PVV and the NSC is not maybe the content itself, it is how to get to the solutions for this country. What Omtzigt would like is an extra parliamentary cabinet. Literally, he said this: looking at the battleground, my translation, after November 22nd, I am firmly in favour of an extra parliamentary cabinet. That cabinet will consist of a number of ministers from political parties and a number of ministers from outside the politics with great knowledge on the topics of the department. Then I skip a little part, because I don't think, looking at the election results, that a normal cabinet is going to offer the best policies to solve the big problems in our society. I said that from day one, and I will keep saying that in the next round or phase. End quote. What does it mean, this extra parliamentary cabinet? It means that the distance between parliament and cabinet will become bigger. There will be no coalition, and when there is a majority, it is made in that moment about that issue. And this means that there will be more real discussion. Instead of members of the parliament asking critical questions where the coalition already knows what is going to happen. It will, of course, also reduce the influence of the largest party. It will represent everyone more equally. Another possibility, according to Omtzigt, is to create a minority coalition without direct support of any party. To solve big problems in society, this seems to have worked well in the past for the Netherlands. But there is something different about the quote, and that is that it shows that Omtzigt has not a great amount of trust in a good agreement from this coalition. So we now have three possible structures of which the parties don't agree upon. The PVV, I can't be sure, but I believe that they feel they can best push the agenda with a majority coalition. The VVD wants a minority coalition, we already saw that, with a supporting party themselves, and the NSA wants an extra parliamentary cabinet or a minority coalition without a supporting party. We probably will know more on Wednesday, because I have a feeling that although Plasterk mentioned that it was not in his assignment to talk about the structure, although I think he had proposed that, I think that it might be very possible that he will come up with what he thinks might be a good solution when it comes to structure. Somebody else, a commentator, somebody who has been an informateur himself, said that the first thing they need to work on is this structure. And it was after I wrote this whole piece, and I thought, yeah, right. Actually, I think that is my conclusion as well. Maybe it is good to make a sidestep here, because Peter Omtzigt, I already told you, it is a brand new party, the NSA, but he has been in the parliament for 17 years, and you don't get into the parliament without being part of a party. The party he was part of was the CDA, and those are the Christian Democrats. And that didn't go well. In the end, he has been kicked out of the party, or he left himself, but it is clear that the CDA and Omtzigt were growing apart. And it came with a lot of problems. According to Omtzigt, the atmosphere towards him by the other members of the party was hostile, and a lot of names, not the nicest, has been given to him. Peter Omtzigt is like a terrier. When he grabs something with his teeth, he won't let go. And that didn't fall well with everyone because he was more pushing his own agenda than that he was really a part of the CDA. That is a bit what I can distillate from what I have heard and what I read. And I find it really hard to say whether Omtzigt hasn't been supported enough or that he wasn't supportive enough to the CDA. When it comes to his ability to be a member of the parliament, I need to say that most of the people, of the members, speak highly of him. He is not one in a kind, but he is different. And I think he means a lot to a lot of voters here in the Netherlands. And it gives him a bit of a weird position. What we do when we go voting is we vote normally for a party, but actually we are voting for a person. If we don't know which person we want to vote for, we just vote for the party and then we elect the first on the list. Omtzigt was put low on the list, which means that he probably wouldn't come back into the parliament. But he asked the support of his voters, and they did vote for him, enough for him to come back to the parliament. If you have enough votes, you can't be refused to become part of the parliament, and that is what happened. But whether that was a good situation within the CDA, that's not known. At the same time, curiously enough, he almost has been the number one of the party. But he came second in a bit of a battle, but only just. It was not like that people didn't want him, that they vote him out. No, it was just. But after that, when it turned out that that number one person couldn't do the job because he had a very difficult and time-consuming other job, it had to do with COVID, Omtzigt wasn't asked to become the number one. He was passed by somebody else. So it's a really weird situation. There was a lot of respect for him, but there was also a lot of pushing back towards him. I heard people say about this situation that, or not about this situation, but that you can't grasp what is going on in the head of this man. What I do know is that he is very much into details. He is said to have the memory of an elephant, and he has. If you want to try to outgun him with facts, you will have a really hard time with him. What is also clear, and that I think he will not deny it himself, is that he is not much of a leader. And that has something to do with sitting in those details. He has very much his own narrative, and it is very hard for him to come out of that narrative and see the bigger picture. And I'm just philosophing here because I really don't know. But now I have said this, I think there might be some truth in it. But of course, I'm not Omtzigt, I'm not in his head, so I can only guess. But I think that we have seen something of that here. He has a very clear narrative, a very clear way of thinking for himself. He knows what he wants. He wants to know about the finances of the Netherlands, but somehow he doesn't feel heard. Don't think this is the truth, because I really don't know. Okay, let's move on. Because the seat is personal, Omtzigt stayed in the chamber, the second chamber. We call it the second chamber, which is the parliament. And if you want to know a fun fact about this, because he wasn't part of a party anymore, he also didn't have a seat in the Council of Europe anymore, and he was very active in that council. And it was the PVV who gave their seat to Omtzigt, so he could still function there. Okay, we talked about the 3 different structures, or 4 different structures: a majority coalition, a minority coalition with and without a supporting party, and an extra parliamentary coalition. And we have also seen that Omtzigt doesn't have that much trust in this coalition. There was something different that drew my attention this week, though, and that is a remark of an economist, and he has a foreign name. I couldn't hear it clearly, and I couldn't find it either, so he's nameless for now. Here's the clip.
Het macro-economische nieuws met Edin Mujagic. Edin, goedemiddag.
Goedemiddag, Thomas.
Het is niemand ontgaan, jou ook niet. Pieter Omtzigt heeft de formatiegesprekken gestaakt, omdat hij zo geschrokken is van de financiële huishouding. Nederland staat er toch nog slechter voor dan eerder werd gedacht. Deel jij zijn zorgen?
Nou ja, het is wel iets wat mij opviel. En als ik dan naar de afgelopen 24 uur kijk, dan viel 1 zinnetje mij op. Namelijk dat het schijnt zo te zijn dat het nieuwe sociaal contract zich teruggetrokken heeft nadat allerlei financiële brieven van alle ministeries binnen waren gekomen, waaruit zou blijken dat onze overheidsfinanciën er veel slechter voor staan dan werd gedacht. En toen dacht ik, maar het stond al slecht voor. Dus als dat waar is, dan hebben we het toch echt over een angstaanjagende zaak. Want als dit waar is, dan maak ik me als econoom nog meer zorgen dan dat ik me hiervoor maakte, Thomas.
Daar hoort de kanttekening bij dat er altijd wordt gevraagd naar zwarte scenario's aan alle ministeries. Ja. Dan leveren die ministeries hun zwarte scenario en dan zeg je als formerende partij, goh, dat is wel een zwart scenario, hè?
Dat gaat altijd inderdaad zo. Alleen ik denk dat je niet al te veel fantasievermogen nodig hebt om misschien te concluderen dat het nu net iets anders is dan bij de formaties die we in de afgelopen tijd hebben gehad. Want die hebben altijd natuurlijk rekening moeten houden met onzekerheden. Maar kansen op aanhoudende, CQ nieuwe oorlogen in de wereld en geopolitieke spanningen, dat is toch wel redelijk nieuw.
Maybe we shouldn't forget that Pieter Omtzigt is an econometrist. He knows about finances, he knows about economy. And an econometrist works with models. He is trying to find patterns within the economy. And it seems that he loves stats. This economist we have been listening to mentions that the economy of the Netherlands is already in a bad shape. We already saw that. 17 billion of cuts. And that is the advice of a commission. And I'd like to sidestep here again. Because besides some tax reliefs here and there in the last few decades, I think since the early 80s when we had a crisis, the social nets, so to speak, to catch the ones who are most vulnerable have been broken down, and they never have been built up again. It means that those groups are starting to fall through the cracks. Not starting, they are already falling through the cracks since a few years now, that you can really see changes. People who can't afford to rent anymore, even when they have a job. And that is what I thought was only possible in the States, but it is now here as well. People are living in their cars. They are living in those cars although they have work. I find that really weird. I'm not that young anymore, but in my whole life I never thought that something like that would happen to certain people. That bad, I mean, and to so many people, that you even see the middle class struggling. That is new. Over a week ago, one of the members of the parliament from the left side has been addressing this, because it turned out that a few groups got less than they got before. And then I'm talking about income. And he was mentioning that that group was living off welfare and that they had 61 euros less. Whether that is absolute or in percentage, I don't know. But it is a whole lot of money for somebody in welfare, because it is about a week of food. And what do they have in common? Well, a few groups are living on welfare, but all the groups were people who were living alone, maybe with children, but not with a partner. All of them. Well, how that is possible, where the government says, well, that is not going to happen, and it happens, I'm going to tell you in a special, but I can give you a preview.
Ons belastingstelsel hebben we vanuit de politiek zodanig ingewikkeld gemaakt in toeslagen, dat jij niet weet dus wanneer je 100 euro extra verdient, hoeveel je ervan overhoudt. Dat is voor bepaalde mensen in Nederland is het maar 20 euro. Voor andere mensen houden er 60 euro van over. En dat zijn allemaal middeninkomens. Hè? Ik heb het niet over de top. Dus we hebben een belastingstelsel dat bijna niemand meer doorgrondt. Wat gebaseerd is op econometrische modellen.
Ja.
Omdat het enige metrum wat wij in Den Haag op dit moment hebben, heet koopkrachtplaatjes.
Ja.
En koopkrachtplaatjes gaat niet over rechtvaardigheid, betaal je rechtvaardige belasting, maar gaat over politieke beeldvorming.
And I am giving you this preview because I think this is important in this moment. Because what he says is that the model has become more important to base policies on than what we see happening in our wallets. And models are tweaked in such ways, consciously, that it looks like everyone is becoming richer, but those sets only show the groups who matter most. But I already told you there are people falling through the cracks. Because in reality, there are quite a few people who are not represented in these models. To make a model look good, the different governments have created a lot of stimuli and tax reliefs that only target certain groups. And there is another way of doing it. For instance, you take money away from a group and give it back through other means. Except that the government already knows that not everyone in that group is going to use the other means. And that is probably because they don't get informed. Where you got it with your salary automatically before, now you need to find the right form at the right institution to get the same money. And if you are not informed about that, well, how will you know? So in the models you can show the money is there, it looks good, but in reality, when rules become that complicated, change regularly, or the government is not making an attempt to make things clear, they show nice figures and save money at the same time. Okay, back to our subject. Because there's one piece missing, and that is that the PVV, especially and probably also the BBB, would like to spend money. The PVV has party issues about the Islam, but it might be that spend money, especially on this group who are already having a hard time, is what is left of the PVV's program. Besides immigration, but immigration turned out to be a hard issue as well. It was said by a lot of people, well, immigration, it's easy. It isn't, because when you say immigration to your syllabus of the VVD, you get what that is and what the problem with it is, you get a different response than when you ask the PVV. Where the PVV and the BBB wants to spend money, the VVD to support those groups, the VVD and the NSA, would like to reduce the spending. But it shows you that the tensions within that coalition about finances was really high. And we have seen that because the tweeting started when those financial advisors started to walk in and out of the talks. So they already had difficult discussions about money and the finances of the Netherlands and what to do about it or not, and which plans could take fruition and which one couldn't. Okay, whether Omtzigt is actually right or not, he has responded in a certain way. And well, you don't need to be a scientist or something like that to understand that it will cost him. And it did. Here are the polls.
Ja, vandaag is gepeild. Ruim 5000 mensen via peil.nl. En wat ik altijd doe, ik kijk naar de overgangen. Wat hebben mensen gestemd en wat gaan ze nu stemmen? En het verloop daarin. Daaruit kan je eigenlijk het beste halen wat de stand is.
Ja, dit is van vorige week. Dit is de stand van vorige week. Als je het kunt zien. Daar staat de PVV op 50 zetels. NSC, dus voor de breuk aan de formatietafel.
Ze waren al iets aan het wegzakken.
Ja, staat hier op
15.
De VVD staat op 13 en de BBB staat op
7.
CDA ook eveneens op 7. Dat was vorige week, voor de breuk. Nu is de breuk geweest. Omtzigt die zegt, ik ben uitgepraat daar in ieder geval in dit stadium.
En dit is de uitslag. NSC is teruggezakt naar 11, van 20 naar 11. Dat zijn 4 zetels die eraf zijn gegaan. En die zijn terechtgekomen 2 extra bij PVV. 1 bij het CDA, die nu op 8 staat. En 1 bij BBB. En wat er met name gebeurt is, als je mensen vraagt... die zeiden, ik heb NSC gestemd, wat doet u nu? Dat was, vorig jaar zei 6%, ik weet niet wat ik ga stemmen. En nu is het 20% die zegt, ik weet niet wat ik ga stemmen.
Jij hebt natuurlijk ook gekeken naar vertrouwenscijfers. En laten we zeggen, de analyse erachter. Ja. Is dan de conclusie dat het electoraat dat bij de vorige verkiezingen op Pieter Omtzigt heeft gestemd... hem voor een deel nu de rug toekeert?
Ja, dat is zeker het geval. Dat zie je ook in de uitslag. Ja. Maar Ik heb ook bijvoorbeeld gevraagd, wat voor kabinet wil je? En de mensen die weg zijn gegaan bij NSC, die zeggen voor 80% die rechtse combinatie. En de mensen die gebleven zijn, zegt 50% nog steeds toch wel die rechtse combinatie. Maar het is dus heel gepolariseerd, ook binnen die aanhang. En als je naar het vertrouwenscijfer kijkt, heel lang was hij nummer 1.
Ja.
En het was iets al aan het wegzakken, maar het was nog best hoog.
Ja.
En nu zie je dat de mensen die NSC hebben gestemd, maar nu niet meer, daar scoort hij nu nog maar een 4. Terwijl,
een 4?
Ja, terwijl dat zijn de mensen die weg zijn gegaan bij NSC. Die zijn echt fors teleurgesteld die bij NSC weggaan. Terwijl de mensen die gebleven zijn bij NSC, daar staat hij op 8,3.
Ja.
En dat zijn de cijfers, Henri Bontebal onder zijn eigen CDA-kiezers. Wilders zelfs onder zijn eigen kiezers nog hoger.
What I find interesting of those polls is that it is that there is polarization within the NSC, and that a lot of people want to go override with the NSC, where I am not sure whether the NSC is a purely right party. I actually don't think so. I think they are more in the middle. Not left, not right. Okay, that was it for me today, or actually this week. But I will be back probably next week. We will have the report of the informateur, Plastic, on Monday, and the debate on Wednesday. And the NSA wants to talk to their members on 2 Fridays, next Friday and the week after. It might be that I will make one compilation, as I did this week. It will depend. But it takes a lot of time to keep on top of things, to write it out, to tape it, and to edit it. And every vlogger complains about editing because it costs a lot of time. And sadly, I can only spend a few hours a day to make vlogs, and I can't do that every day. And there's always something happening. So I have 2 specials in the making, and both are stranded for now, and I think they will be stranded for next week, and maybe the weeks after, because we are now in the middle of this coalition thing. But it means that I am a bit slow, but I also try to be thorough, and I also try to give you some more context about it. Having said that, I hope you liked it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, or let me know in the comments how you feel about all this. Do you also feel that the form at the moment is more important than the content? Well, let me know. By the way, I am biased, and you probably can read between the lines, so you probably know. But what I try to do is to give information for you to draw your own conclusions, and I think context is really important. That's why I give some context. Okay, if you are still there, having been sitting through this whole thing, thank you for listening, and goodbye. See you next time.